Why you have to make all these excuses for her? This, like I said, all this was this week was people who said, oh, she ran a flawless campaign. How ridiculous. Or it's sexism, it's racism. This is an old playbook.
Yes, I didn't say any of those things.
I know, but I've heard a lot of these things. And like, I think America's perfectly willing to elect a woman. They just didn't like the last two that...
Buckle up, because this might be the most absurd blame game in recent politics. The media's meltdown over Kamala Harris losing to Donald Trump has been nothing short of theater. With MSNBC leading the excuse factory like it's running overtime. By now, you'd think they'd have retired the old sexism and racism playbook or, at least, updated it. But nope, it's the same recycled script, rerun after rerun. Then came Bill Maher, who wasn't having any of it. He swung a wrecking ball. Straight through their pity paradin'. It was brutal to watch in the best way possible. Let's roll it back.
But you're either the person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out, or you know in a week. Huh? You know, did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after a week to make a decision?
All week long, pundits kept insisting Harris's campaign was flawless. Flawless. That's like calling New Coke a marketing triumph, or Cats a cinematic masterpiece. It wasn't flawless. It wasn't even in the neighborhood. And once that fairy tale fell apart, the usual excuses got dusted off. Sexism, racism, ignorant voters. Here's the reality. America can and will elect a woman president. We've just been handed the wrong candidates in the last couple of tries.
It's racism. This is an old playbook.
Yes, I didn't say any of those things.
I know, but I've heard a lot of these things. And like, I think America's perfectly willing to elect a woman. They just didn't like the last two.
That's not misogyny. That's just called not being impressed. And last I checked, that's allowed. The mayor was only stating the obvious. Harris spent 3.5 years stuffed in a political broom closet, barely visible. Her approval ratings probably looked better, simply because people forgot she was even around. Then, just 107 days before the election, she suddenly rolled out as the face of the Democratic ticket. And we're supposed to believe America didn't have enough time to get to know her. Please.
Vice President of the United States is basically shoved in a broom closet for 3.5 years.
I know.
Like, you couldn't.
She was more popular in there.
Yes, well.
I mean, this idea that in a mass media age, that 107 days is not long enough to know somebody.
You are way overestimating the American people in terms of what they.
No.
You have someone like Donald Trump has become a universally known, understood, loved by some, hated by others over the course of being omnipresent.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. This isn't the 1800s. We live in an era where Donald Trump has dominated the national conversation for 8 years straight without even trying. Americans don't need decades to size someone up. They didn't with Trump. They didn't with Obama. And they didn't with Harris. The truth is, people already knew her. They just didn't like her. Period. The mayor was right about media silos. Sure, the right has its own outlets now. But that didn't start on the right. It started when the left locked down legacy media. CNN, MSNBC, NPR. They all turned into political shields. Negative stories about Democrats disappeared, embarrassing clips got buried, and anything awkward was edited away. Meanwhile, Trump got pummeled on repeat, while Democrats were bathed in soft lighting and tossed Hallmark card questions. That's not journalism, that's PR, and the public picked up on it.
Do the Democrats need a social media platform, this is for you, John, of their own to combat the Republican influence on Twitter? Well, I don't know, but Twitter, it's funny, it used to be completely left. Then Elon said, I'm going to take it over, so it's going to be 50-50 right down the middle. He didn't do that. It just switched completely. So I don't know. It's terrible that I think that we have our own media silos. We need places where, like this show, but there's not enough of them, where everybody comes and everybody hears everybody else from all points of view.
That's why millions tuned out of the so-called serious outlets and turned to independent voices like Rogan, Theo Vaughn, and a whole army of others. They weren't trying to play neutral, they were just raw and unfiltered. And the irony, those guys recording in garages ended up shaping the election more than the entire legacy media machine combined. Hilarious, really. The left had the networks, the headlines, even Twitter under their thumb. And they still got outflanked by PODCASTS.
I think the deeper question that the question's getting at is that if you look at the data in this election, the amount of reach of all of these alternative, I'm talking about the whole podcast space mostly, but also social media. The interviews that Trump did, not starting with Rogan, but Theo Vaughn and all of these other things he did, incredible reach compared to old mainstream media.
Then John Heilman strolls in with "Twitter isn't a real place." Oh, how convenient. It was plenty real when it was being used to ban stories, throttle accounts, and enforce one-sided narratives. But the moment Elon takes over, suddenly it's irrelevant. That's not clarity, that's loser's remorse. And you can see it every time the bias question creeps too close to the surface. The anchors start squirming, tiptoeing around it, dressing half-truths in soft language. It's like watching someone try to walk barefoot across a floor full of Legos.
I'd like to steal a line from Dave Chappelle, who said at some point how he doesn't know very much about what goes on Twitter because he doesn't go on Twitter because Twitter's not a real place. That's sort of how I feel about Twitter. And Twitter, not only is Twitter not a real place, but it's become a toxic cesspool filled with nothing, not about right, it's not about conservative, it's just filled with misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories. So I would rather not have the left replicate that if that's what's...
And then came the inflation excuse. This one's priceless. Heilman actually argued that voters' economic frustration was just perception. As if families only imagined their grocery bills doubling. As if small business owners just dreamed up their crushing rent and utility costs. As if filling the gas tank didn't actually drain wallets. Perception. No, that was reality. And it smacked people right in the paycheck. Gas prices through the roof. Mortgages north of 7%. Wages stuck in neutral. Fridges half empty. You don't need a pollster to tell you that, Dot.
If you're the sitting vice president for a president who has, throughout his entire term in office, been sitting at about somewhere between a 35 and 40% approval rating. People view the Biden administration as a failure. We can have a long discussion about whether they are right about that, about the economy, but the perceptions of the economy were that people thought inflation was too high, people thought we were on the wrong track, 75% wrong track numbers, and this huge inflation overhang. You're the sitting vice president, and you get put on elevated to the top of the ticket 107 days ahead of the election. I think that is a very high degree of difficulty put on anybody, and I do not think she is the perfect candidate. I tend to agree with Sarah that probably in a fully litigated primary, she probably would not have been the Democratic nominee, but we'll never know that. But I will tell you that there's never been anybody who's had the difficulty of that situation, elevated that late in the campaign.
And here's the elitist kicker. When Heilman says 107 days wasn't enough time for voters to get to know Kamala, what he's really saying is, you're too dumb to figure it out that quickly. Wrong and insulting. Americans weren't confused. They were paying attention. The mayor was spot on. Plenty of countries run full elections in weeks, not years. By the first week, most people already had Kamala pegged. They'd seen the awkward laughs, the word salads, the failure to stick a landing. You don't need 12 months to know whether someone inspires confidence.